Back here now on the show for the last segment on today's episode. To wrap up the week, we're talking about the Chicago Bears starting training camp this week for their rookies and talking about their defense and just the expectations to have for this unit heading into 2024. But to get to those expectations, we have to talk about one of their major additions that they got last year in Montez Sweat. Last year, with the Commanders and how much they overhauled their roster in the second half of the year because they did end up going 1-8 to finish off the year last year. So they cleaned house a lot. They moved on from not only Montez Sweat, they fired Ron Rivera, they traded Chase Young, and of course Montez Sweat in those transactions as well. They overhauled, they did a good job of rebuilding now in Washington, but Montez Sweat with Chicago for that second half of the season, I think he became the one of the first or maybe the only player to lead both teams in sacks in just 1 year, which is pretty ridiculous in how much he made an impact right away for the Chicago Bears. And with that impact, they right away gave him that 4-year, $98 million contract that Washington wouldn't give to him at the time because they probably got the inclination that they were heading towards more of a rebuild anyway. So it didn't make too much sense for them. They shipped him out. The Bears could afford his contract, and now he forms part of a very exciting young group that got better as the season went on last year. Offensively, they had their struggles with the quarterback position just not looking great. The play calling and everything just it seemed like it was missing something, or you were trying to fit a round peg in a square hole. Basically, it just didn't look right from the beginning of the season to the end. Their defense, though, like I mentioned, was building on a pretty steady trajectory where you could feel confident in them, I believe, heading into 2024 now because last year overall as a defense, they were first in the NFL in run defense. They were 12th in yards per game allowed, and they were about middle of the pack in pass defense and points per game allowed as well. But Montez Sweat, like I said, forms a part of a very young group that makes up the Chicago Bears defense, which includes both their linebackers like Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards, one of the best, more underrated linebacking duos in the NFL. Then you have Jalen Johnson, one of the up-and-coming young defensive backs as well in the NFL. He just got paid this offseason, so the Bears, and much like the entire NFL, holds him in high regard. Jaquan Brisker as well, their safety. Pretty much they got talent almost at every level of their defense to anchor this team and just to build on how successful they were in that second half of the year, now heading into 2024. But you look at the talent that they have on their team right now, and you're thinking, why did this really not work too well with Montez Sweat in Washington? Because in Washington, their defensive line had some great players as well. You look at that defensive line with Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and also Montez Sweat in there. Why did this not work out when you had very talented players on both teams? What was the difference really in both situations? And that's where Montez Sweat spoke with The Athletic recently about the differences between the two spots and what went in to seeing different levels of success with both units. He said, in Washington, everyone was kind of like the alpha male, and they are great players, but it was hard for guys to make sacrifices for all of us to be of one accord. In Chicago, we don't have that problem, and I think that's how Montez Sweat viewed it, and a lot of times you don't really see that. And he brings up a good point because just bringing talented, very good players, individual players together doesn't necessarily mean the unit and how the entire group looks is going to turn out as you'd think. And that's sort of where Montez Sweat was going with that statement. And it could have turned out to be true. There could have been other problems that could have led to them not looking more of a unit. But regardless of that, it's water under the bridge now. And now we head towards the future with this Chicago Bears team. And we're starting to look at them, I think, a little bit different now because this defense was one thing last year. In the second half of the year, they were they were considered a top 5 defense in that stretch where they brought in Montez Sweat. He made a lot of impacts right away. I think he had something like 5.5 or 3.5 sacks in his first 5 or 7 games or something like that. Right away making an impact with this team, and they were top 5 in a lot of statistical categories during that time, right away when Montez Sweat joined the team. And after that, after the conclusion of the year, of course, Chicago wasn't where they wanted to be as a team, but individually, you had a Pro Bowl career year for Jalen Johnson, made the Pro Bowl. Tremaine Edmonds also had a career year in terms of interceptions that he got as well. And they were tied for first with the 49ers in interceptions as well in that unit. So it seems like they got the selflessness already down, as Montez Sweat pointed out. And you combine that with some of their top players and the talent that they have on this team and how much the defense really improved with just adding Montez Sweat to the equation, they should be now looked upon as a team where this defense, I'm expecting it to kind of be in the mix for a top 10, maybe just a little bit more top 8, no less than top 12 conversation for this team, to be in that 8 to 12 range in terms of ranking, in terms of statistics and how many points you're allowing, passing yards you're allowing, run game defense, all of that mixed in. I'm expecting them to be in the 8 to 12 range as a unit on the defensive side of the ball, because Matt Eberflus, their head coach, is a defensive-minded coach. He was a linebackers coach and has predominantly been more involved on that side of the ball. So you have him at the helm of everything, wanting that to still be their identity. And it's funny to mention defense as still being their identity, because this year they overhauled their offense with obviously Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, bringing on Keenan Allen as well as DeAndre Swift. You're thinking that maybe now this offense is going to be the main, picture of this team. They're going to be based off of how well Caleb Williams is doing. But on the contrary, I still think that defense will be this team's main identity, at least to start right away, because they know what they are. They have a clearer picture of what their mindset is, what their game plan is going into every game, how they're setting up, and what their personnel group is, and everything like that. Whereas the offense is sort of just stepping into that. We have to see how Caleb Williams is in real speed, regular season game speed, not so much right now where they're heading into training camp now. So it's going to pick up a little bit more, but we have to actually see him play in the regular season, and also how he merges and builds that chemistry with not only Rome Odunze, who's also a rookie, but with DJ Moore, who's on the team already, Keenan Allen coming into a new environment. Same thing with DeAndre Swift. They have a lot more things to figure out where this defense sort of spent the second or the first half of last year figuring that all out. They found their footing in the second half of the year when Montez Sweat came over, and now heading into 2024, I think they're stepping more into their light, stepping more confidently into 2024 where they know what their identity is. And I think shooting for 8 to top 12 defense in the NFL will go a long way with not only making them a formidable team, but helping that offense a lot more when they know that they don't have to go out there and score 25 points every game, because their defense is holding other teams to 18, 17 points per game. And I think that's realistic for this defense. I really do. I think that they really impressed me in the second half of the year with some of their young players and now more experienced guys leading that defense. I have high regards for this team, and if they figure out that offense, which I do expect it to find its footing at some point in this season, because I am a believer in Caleb. Keenan is a great receiver. DJ Moore showed out last year. I was a big fan of Rome Odunze as well. That offense is going to find their footing. I think Caleb is exactly what that franchise needed. But the expectations for this defense right now is 8 to 10 or 8 to 12, like I mentioned. But to still be that leading force to drive this team towards the halfway point of the season, and then you could start looking at becoming a more balanced team, one side of the ball relying on the other side and being more cohesive, more yin and yang like that, rather than just having a dominant defense keeping you in games the entire time. That isn't sustainable too much, likewise as it is when an offense just has to continually put up 30 points a game because your defense isn't that good. When you have more of a balanced unit on both sides of the ball, it looks a lot better. You feel a lot better about it. And I think the Bears have the potential of reaching those heights. But right now, at least to start with how much youth they have on the offensive side of the ball, I'm expecting the Bears to take that next step on defense and be a top 8 to top 12 defense in terms of ranking them among some of the best defenses in the NFL in a division where there's a lot of good players, there's a lot of good quarterbacks that are going to be eventually good quarterbacks right now competing for that spot. So they're going to need it. I think that Bears defense could really stifle a Lions offense, a Packers high-powered offense. If they could do that, they're going to be in some games now because of their defense. So if they could take advantage of that, it could go a long way in making this a very successful first year for Caleb, because he is pretty much everything for this team. He is the face of the Bears already, and having a dominant defense, I think, will help him out tremendously. But let me know what you guys think about it. Do you think the Bears can be able to rank among the top 8, maybe more, this year in 2024 in terms of defense, or am I overhyping it a little bit here to close out the show? Let me know how you guys feel about that in the comment section. But with that being said, that'll do it. That'll wrap it up for today's show of the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media as well. If you want to see more of this show, check out both YouTube channels, the Podcast Network channel and the GSMC Sports Network channel, where there are more forms of content that you can see around the NFL. And as a final reminder, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more discussions and NFL topics around this great league with me, Manny Moradiege, as your host. Thanking you guys for joining me today. I hope you guys all have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys back here again on Monday.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to